James Monahan here, and today we're going to be looking at Those Winter Sundays by Robert Hayden. So pull that up, and we'll begin. Okay, so the title itself, Those Winter Sundays. Whenever we see weather, times of the year, times of the day, times of the week, times of the months, we're going to know that it's probably going to be symbolic in poetry. So winter is generally the hard times of life, the cold times of life, the end of something at its lowest point before rebirth, before coming back again. And Sundays, a time of rest, also in the Christian tradition where a lot of Western culture comes from. We're going to see allusions to God sometimes, also first or last day of the week, depending on who you are. So those winter Sundays, that's what we're talking about. Those days of rest, perhaps in the cold times of life. Sundays too, my father got up early and put his clothes on in the blue-black cold. Then with cracked hands that ached from labor in the weekday weather made banked fires blaze. No one ever thanked him. I'd wake and hear the cold splintering, breaking. When the rooms were warm, he'd call, and slowly I would rise and dress, fearing the chronic angers of that house, speaking indifferently to him, who had driven out the cold and polished my good shoes as well. What did I know? What did I know of love's austere and lonely offices? Okay. So, this is written reflectively. Because we know that I would do this. It's in the past tense. He's older now, so he's looking back on it, giving him a little bit of perspective. So, Sundays too, my father got up early, which implies that his dad gets up early every day. And I like this poem because it kind of forces us into a little bit of gratitude, at least those who have dads around. And that is definitely not everyone. And for those of you who don't have one, I'm sorry. It kind of sucks. But if you do have one, and he isn't too bad, let's look at, this is a poem about those kinds of dads. The ones who aren't perfect. He wasn't great, but he had some good things. So let's look at this. He got up early, like he did every other day. Sunday is that day of rest. It's cold time. It's a time you don't want to get up, but he does. But in the blue-black cold. Look at that blue-black. Sounds good to say, but it's also black, cold. Those harsh consonant sounds. Then with cracked hands that ached. These are harsher sounds. It's the harsher sounds mirroring the harsher environment. It's not a pretty time he's going into. It's not a cozy, warm bed with hot cocoa. This is going out in the cold. And his body aches. It hurts. Harsh manual labor. Oof. And then this is all one sentence leading up to banked fires blaze. He made it warm. Then a very short sentence. No one ever thanked him. This whole, all of the first stanza, except for that little no one ever thanked him, is one sentence. So we'll do a lot of the time in writing and in poetry. You'll have a long sentence to give an idea of what's going on. In this case, the basic premise is that the dad's getting up early, going out in the cold. His body hurts, but he's going to go chop the firewood, get the fire started. That's all there in the first stanza in one sentence until the second sentence, no one ever thanked him. Now we use a short sentence to punctuate those main ideas. No one ever thanked him. Okay. I'd wake and hear the cold splintering, breaking, again, those hard sounds, the splintering, breaking. And that also is its own sentence. No one ever thanked him. I'd wake and hear the cold splintering, breaking. The cold is breaking away. It's splintering. It's breaking. When the rooms were warm, he'd call, and slowly I would rise and dress, fearing the chronic angers of that house, speaking indifferently to him, who had driven out the cold and polished my good shoes as well. Now notice that I jumped from one stanza to the next because you don't stop at the end of a stanza or a line. You stop where the punctuation calls. So that was all one sentence. And we get that he's been warm and cozy in his bed, but there are chronic angers in that house, and maybe his dad is part of that. You ever gotten up every single day, back-breaking work super early, and never thanked? Might make his dad cranky. His dad might be human. His dad might hurt. We get the sense. And the stuff that the man's telling us now is probably different than what he would have told us when he was your age. Writing the poem when you're older, you start to appreciate your parents in a way you never did. Hopefully you are smarter and wiser than I was or Robert Hayden, but sometimes it's hard to see when there are chronic angers in that house, or when parents don't give you what you want, don't let you do what you want. It's hard to see it. So probably if the perspective had been back then when he was your age, he might have been emphasizing different things instead of how cold it was outside, the back-breaking work, the pain of it. That's where he's spending all of his time. No one ever thanked him is the thing that he's punctuating. He's no longer frustrated with his dad. We get one little line to fearing the chronic angers of that house, and a whole slew of lines of how cold and how hard it was for his dad to get out there and warm that house up for the family, to go out and work so hard to make that possible for them, to pay for the house, to warm the house, to make sure that they had shelter. But as a kid, he's spoken differently to him, and I love this phrase, to him who had driven out the cold. How do you define your dad? How do you, if you have one, how do you define your caretaker, your teacher? Is it someone who had driven out the cold, or is it a less kind phrase, someone who's doing something for you, who is imperfect? How do you treat them? He had driven out the cold and polished my good shoes as well. He didn't just drive out the cold, and polished my good shoes as well. This is how his dad's being defined now that he can see him from a different perspective. What did I know? What did I know of love's austere and lonely offices? So now this question, as we get older, we have these harder questions of life. What did I know? What did I know of love's austere and lonely offices? So it applies that now he knows a little bit more. That love sometimes has an austere meaning it's not cozy and warm and inviting. It's bare and harder and lonely. Do you think it was cozy and really fun to go out and chop that wood by yourself in the blue-black cold, the dark? No. And then lonely offices. Why the word offices? Implying that maybe it's not just going out there and manual labor. There are these offices we go to, these places to go where we work, the places. Love is work. Love is hard and lonely work a lot of the time. And if you're lucky enough to have someone who is going to go out and do that cold and lonely, hard work for you, think of, at the job they may hate, to pay the mortgage, the food they may not want to chop and cook for you, even if you don't like it, even if it's Brussels sprouts that'll make you healthy. These lonely offices, what did he know? Do you know of those yet? You will later. I hope that if you're lucky enough to have someone who does that for you, I hope you take a minute and thank them. I hope you take a minute after reading those winter Sundays and take a second to define them as someone who had driven out the cold and polished my good shoes as well. And maybe even let them know. Maybe let them know that they don't have to be as lonely anymore in this. No one ever thanked him. Maybe if you're lucky enough to have someone who does that for you, maybe don't have that regret later on that no one ever thanked them. And I hope you have a wonderful day, and that you, get to move on and do something more fun with your life after this poetry. So Those Winter Sundays by Robert Hayden. Thank you for listening.